Ready. It's 7 o'clock. We will convene the meeting. Lori?
All councilors are present.
We'll go to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll now have the special announcements for the day. Councilor DeForest, would you please read the proclamation for the recognizing July as Park and Recreation Month?
Wonderful. And Brian Ramsey is here, as well as Spencer Waite. So do you want to join us as well? I have to admit, I love the purple pride. Go Knights. All right. An official proclamation of the City of Beloit. Whereas recreation and parks programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including here in Beloit, Wisconsin. And whereas our recreation and parks are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. And whereas recreation and parks programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas recreation and parks programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And whereas recreation and parks areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. And whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Recreation and Parks Month, and whereas Beloit, Wisconsin recognizes the benefits derived from recreation and parks resources. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City Council of the City of Beloit, Rock County, Wisconsin, hereby designates that July is recognized as National Recreation and Parks Month in the City of Beloit, adopted this 5th day of July, 2016, David F. Lupke, City Council President.
Thank you very much. If I could just say a few words as well. Seeing that Chief Z is here, I just want to thank him and the police department last night for all their great assistance they provided to us in putting on the annual 4th of July celebration. They really did an outstanding job, and I'm sure everybody saw how busy our parks were and the great crowd we had for the fireworks last night. It was great. The other thing I'd like to do is I want to make certain I invite the council to attend our next Parks and Rec Commission meeting next Wednesday night on July 13th. We will be doing our annual parks tour on that night. We start at 5 o'clock at the golf course. You're all welcome and encouraged to attend. Just show up and we'll take care of things from there. We hope to be done by 9 o'clock. So you're all welcome to attend the course. Last but not least, if anybody out there has any questions about what we do, like to get involved in parks and recreation activities of any kind, reserve a shelter, attend the pool, please feel free to call Spencer or any of his staff at our leisure services. You can reach them at area code 608-364-2890. Thank you all very much.
Brian, just a sidebar before you all sit down. Those two people standing behind you, Spencer Waite, just won the city tournament yesterday with a score of 67.
Correct.
That's what I shoot for 9 holes. He got it for 18. And her son is the youngest member of our Parks Commission, so we're lucky there. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're to that part of the meeting where we have citizens' participation.
We still have.
Oh, I'm sorry, I went ahead, my fault. Okay, our public hearing. Our public hearing is, would you want to read that, please?
Sure. To solicit input on the community development, housing, and homeless needs in the city for inclusion in the 2017 annual action plan.
Thank you. Ms. Christensen.
Well, we kick off the CDBG, the Community Development Block Grant, budget process each year with a public hearing to solicit needs. So this is the night that's been noticed for the public to come out and to give input on public housing, community development, homeless, and housing needs, which will be incorporated into the annual action plan. And also, I would hope that any needs that are identified would be considered by the council when at their next meeting they're actually going to set the local funding priorities for the dollars, because we have such a limited amount of dollars. So I guess to listen to what the community says, for if anyone gets up and speaks, and then what's included in what I included or I handed out to you tonight was a little fact sheet on community development block grant, because we have a new counselor who may not be fluent in community development block grant. So this will give you some basic information, and since he also sits on our CDA, it'll give him the information he needs as we move through this process. So tonight, it's only information, so you're here just to listen tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Christensen. Since this is a public hearing, we will take at this time comments from the public. First call for anybody who'd like to speak in this matter. Thank you. Just please come down, introduce yourself, and give us your address, please.
Hello, my name is Ian Hedges. I'm the Executive Director from HealthNet of Rock County. My address is 3116 South Flack Road, Beloit, Wisconsin. I'm here because HealthNet of Rock County is a free and charitable clinic that provides services to low-income and uninsured Rock County residents. We have a medical, dental, and vision clinic that's been serving folks who have no other place to turn. We have, for the past 2 years, been recipients of CDBG funds, and that is why I'm here today, because I would like to emphasize the importance of health, wellness, in the human services realm as it relates to our funding priorities. I can tell you that with the $8,000 last year that we received, 40% of our patients are approximately Beloit residents. So even though the Beloit Area Community Health Center exists, we are considered partners. Some of our patients aren't able to get the same services there that they can get at our institution. For example, many individuals who come through our doors trying to seek primary care can't necessarily afford the medications afterwards. We're one of the few places that has a medication room where once the medication is prescribed to somebody, we provide it free of charge to the patient. And that includes a whole slew of medications, whether it be insulin, medication related to hypertension, antibiotics, antidepressants, and it is, I think, a great need to many Beloit residents. I will just kind of give you a brief report too that, as a steward of your funds, we have been able to kind of do more than years past with the funds that you have given us. The Beloit patients who are now coming to us are able to get chiropractic and physical therapy services. We were finding that many residents in Beloit and in Rock County were experiencing pain disorders. It's because many folks who are uninsured, low income, work low-wage jobs that require huge amounts of labor. They're on their feet every day. And so we decided the best way to do it without prescribing opioids while seeking an alternative path for them to get pain treatment was to offer this service to them. So that is a very new service to them. So far, we've also seen that 40% of the people utilizing that service are Beloit residents as well. A big announcement, too, that I'm happy to share is, as of today, our dental clinic is now accepting Badger Care patients. This is of a huge need. 27,500 Rock County residents, which with a significant amount of Beloit residents in that group of people, are on Badger Care. Many of them cannot afford to go to the dentist out of pocket, and many dentists are unable to accept Badger Care. I've had this conversation with the Beloit Area Community Health Center, and what we've kind of surmised is, everybody cannot go to Beloit Area Community Health Center. There's too many individuals who can only be served by a few dentists. So we are stepping up to the plate and doing that as well. Accepting Badger Care is not a moneymaker. You get 29 cents to every dollar you spend. So you lose money every time you see a patient. But we wanted to do it because the community need is there. The reason why it relates to community development, though, in a larger picture, and I will just kind of end on this note, is because what we have found is that when we're treating people's health conditions, making them feel empowered, and that they don't have to worry about this one expense, they're able to go back to work. They're much more productive. They also, if their teeth are being fixed, they are more confident to go into job interviews. And I actually had somebody come up to a meeting at me and she said, "Oh, I recognize you from the dental clinic," because I was the receptionist one time at the dental clinic. It was fun. And she said, after I got my partials for my dentures, my front partials, I went out and got a job. And I was so happy. So thank you so much. And I think that is why I asked that health and human services really be prioritized within the next fiscal year. Thank you so much.
Good evening. I have two topics I'd like to touch on, so I'll try to be brief. My name is Donna Ambrose, and I am the Executive Director of Caritas in Beloit. I'm also a Beloit resident, and I live at 2316 Turnberry Court in Beloit. One of the items I wanted to touch on tonight is something that, it's a service that Caritas currently does not provide. However, it's important to know that we are exploring providing this service, and that's housing. I have a serious concern about this because of the fact that we have a high volume of phone calls asking us daily for housing assistance. And Caritas, for those of you not aware, we are a food pantry primarily. We also have a diaper bank. We do a lot of outreach. We have a pantry at Merrill Elementary, among other things. But one thing we do not provide at this time is emergency housing assistance. The calls that we receive daily, it's easy to quickly send them off to United Way, First Call for Help, which is the 211 hotline. However, the calls that we receive are from residents that live right here, that are our neighbors that we see every day. So to just give them a quick, call 211 is not good enough. The concerns I have primarily concern the landlords in Beloit. I know there's been discussion about the landlords that do not have permits. Some do, some don't. Many of our guests that come to see us try to find housing, and when they do, it's often from somebody that does not have a permit, or if they do have a permit, they are treated like their concerns don't matter. So to document, I just wanted to share a few experiences that I have had personally with some of our guests. In particular, there was one young lady that came to see me last year, and she had called, and we always tell them when they call, to first call the city, call City Hall, make sure that this person does in fact have a permit, and then request the thorough walkthrough and to address any concerns you have. So she did this, and she had called me about renting a place on Park. The gentleman did have a permit, so she went through this and was accepted. So shortly after she moved in, there was multiple problems with this housing. Her bedroom that her daughter and her shared was leaking constantly. And there was a garage door that wouldn't open. It fell short. It landed on her car door, literally on her car. I won't go into it, but there was numerous concerns at this home. So I had told her, call your landlord, document, take pictures. She did all those things, and to no avail, nothing was done. So finally, he was frustrated with her calling all the time. So he went to the home unannounced, did not call, give her permission, there was no 24-hour, no nothing. She wasn't home. She was at work. Her babysitter was there with her 3 young children. This gentleman just walked in. He didn't even knock. He just walked into the home. So she called me in a panic and said, "What should I do?" I said, "You call the police." So she did call the police. And the police officer showed up. And basically what happened was the gentleman got his hand slapped and was asked, not to do it again. And this young lady was just, frustrated, was really reluctant to report anything else further because she was afraid of retaliation. She was afraid that he was going to treat her different, and he did. And she ended up moving on, did not get her security deposit, which often happens. Another young lady I helped went to, she had a rental as well that she wanted to visit, and I offered to go with her. The landlord did have a permit again, but the landlord was clearly not happy that I was with her to walk through the home. And, I expressed to her, this is her right, I'm here as her friend, and she has every right to walk through, take pictures, and, to find out if it's safe, affordable, and comfortable for her and her kids. So she did, and decided, yes, she was going to move forward. So after she moved in, there was multiple problems, and again, she called and called, nothing was done. And then the landlord's husband showed up, and sadly, this was twice, unannounced, walked in the house. And she was there when this happened, and she called the police, and again, the police showed up, and there was a discussion, and that was the end of it. In both cases, neither of these young ladies received a security deposit. They moved on. And I wanted to illustrate these stories because these are stories that I hear and I'm personally involved with every day, even though it's beyond the scope of what Caritas does. And I'm not saying this to, I really appreciate our police department, everything they've done, and I know that you guys are taking great strides in improving the situation with the landlords and those with and without permits. But I really feel that the solution moving forward is that there needs to be greater accountability for people that do have permits, that they need to know what the rights are of the tenants in these residents in Beloit that have to, that they're renting. And they might want to rent, they may choose not to own, but there just needs to be more education, like a tenant bill of rights, or more robust resources for people that are renting, because these stories happen all the time. And when this happens, I really believe this, there are many people in this community that do rent that take advantage of disadvantaged people. And when the disadvantaged are taken advantage of, often they feel like they have no voice. So if there is something that should be contested, they won't go to court. They, for various reasons. I try to persuade them otherwise, but more often than not, they will just walk away. And then what happens is they're looking for more housing, and they have to start over and get security deposit, first month's rent, and that's just, beyond most people's reach. So it's a serious issue. So I appreciate you taking the time to hear that. I just wanted to share that because I couldn't just dismiss that knowing that I get these calls and wanted to share this important information with all of you. My other concern is, as far as needs in our community, as the director of Caritas, we see a high volume of people daily for food insecurity issues. We provide emergency resources. Our families can visit us twice a month. We provide them with the groceries for 3 days' worth of meals. And just wanted to share briefly, and I can also email this so you can digest this at a later date. But our numbers, our volume has spiked significantly in the last year. And in 2015, we served 22,000 households. So that was so those are duplicated. Those are households that came more than once a month. It was 22,000. And just in the month of May, I don't have June's yet, but in the month of May, we served 1,400 households that were duplicated. 731 households were people that came to us just once that month. But just to give you an idea of the volume of people we serve, we're part of the Feeding America network, and with that, our partner agency is the Second Harvest Food Bank in Madison. And many of you may know that they operate a mobile pantry here in Beloit. They're here twice a month because Caritas and other pantries in this area cannot possibly meet the needs of the people that need help in this area. So just to give you an idea of the volume of food that they distribute at the mobile, for us, for last year, or they just ended their fiscal year, so all Beloit agencies, including the mobile, 1,404,479 pounds of food were distributed to Beloit residents. And that's huge. And that's twice a month. That's them plus all of the other agencies that provide that emergency assistance. So I just wanted to give, I don't expect you to remember all these stats. So again, I'll share these via email. But more importantly, though, I did really want to speak to this housing issue because we always try to advocate for our guests. We try to tell them that, it's important that they visit us so that they can pay their bills on time, is that their dollars can stretch further. And if they need to, come to us, get some groceries, make sure those bills are paid, that their rent is paid, because it's a constant juggling act. And that's, it's just something that really needs to be addressed. But thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else like to speak on the matter?
Good evening. I'm Lynn Valbrecht. I'm the Community Development Manager at Community Action Inc. of Rockland, North County. I have here with my colleague, Will Chapman.
So I am here to talk a little bit about some of the programs that Community Action runs with the funds that we get from the city as well as other resources. One of the programs is the mentoring program, as you all have, I'm sure, heard about. This year we enrolled 45 young people, and 34 of those young people attended 80% of the sessions. We also took with the mentoring program, and these are young people that are enrolled in Beloit Memorial High School as well as BLA. We also took over 100 youth to visit college campuses to expose them to the college life. 10 of them were placed in summer jobs. And just to back up a little bit, in working with the youth population, Community Action, a part of our goal is to take these young at-risk youth, put them to work, rebuilding their community, but also get them on the ones that may be slipping through the cracks, kind of get them on the right track or make sure they stay on the right track so that they can become and stay positive, productive members of our community. Exposure is a large part of that. If you all have heard about the Fresh Start program, I also supervise that program. Not only am I a manager of that program, I'm also a graduate of that program from another city. So being a graduate myself, staying and working in this field and helping groom our young people and teach our young people to groom each other, because youth listen to youth. And that's the message that we give our young people. We empower you so that you can empower each other to stay on the right track and stay focused. So we've done long arts programs with the college students here. We ran a youth advocate program as a part of that movement to get young people that were struggling in high school, that's trying to get their stuff together. We trained them and took them to the middle school Aldrich, whereas they act as youth mentors to some of the children that were struggling within that middle school to get them on the right track. So we're paving a way for them to be leaders themselves and, again, take responsibility for their life and the route that their community is going. To address poverty as well as the aging housing stock within Beloit and the cost burden of rent, we also work to help these young people get wage-sustaining jobs. And a part of that, the first step is ensuring that they have either a credential but as well as a high school diploma. This year we'll be adding the GED track. So young people that are too old to receive a high school diploma, we want to make sure that they have the roles they need to get their GED. To date, the last cohort that just graduated, Fresh Start, 39 out of 47, which is 83%, received their high school diploma. Last year, as well as all the years prior to that, as far back as 2007, 81% of the youth that came through Fresh Start doors received their high school diploma. And you may have seen in the paper just recently, there was a young lady by the name of Diana Corona, as well as several other young people that started with 0 credits, and within a year, blood, sweat, and tears, they achieved graduation status with hard work. And I'm saying that this young lady would come in and just be stuck to the books and materials that she needed to get her high school diploma. And she was one of the young people that also went to Aldrich to help mentor people, young people that were in trouble. And the principal that was there at the time remembered when she was there. So it was a great experience. The young lady originally wanted to be a flight attendant. Now she wants to be a teacher. And those are jobs that are continually where in the labor market, we're struggling to fill those positions of teachers. So that was a huge plus also. We also run, and I supervise the WIOA program, which services 6 counties. And within those 6 counties, we serve 225 youth this last year. 83% of them completed their high school diploma or a credential. 82% were placed in jobs as a result of boot camps. So again, taking young people that may be struggling, that may not really have it figured out right now, giving them some skills, making sure they get the proper credentials, and get them on the right track so that they can become assets to our community. And that's the work that Community Action does within this community. And I would like to say I'm proud to be a part of the team that does that.
It's really amazing to be here tonight and hear about all these services in the city, because it really makes me proud personally to be a Beloiter. And I've also been really proud to work at Community Action. I came before you last year and I was pretty new, and Mark Perry was here and he's talking about our programs. We do have a lot of programs that are now have a renewed focus on youth, as William was talking about, and that has been very strategic on our part. Like the city, Community Action takes a look every 3 years at the needs of the community, does a needs assessment, a formalized survey, and compiles those statistics to see what we really need. And it doesn't really take a survey to look around, just look at the newspaper and see all the shootings, see the violence, and see that we really do need youth-oriented programs in this city. So that is a huge focus for us right now. I think when Mark Perry was here last year, he told, he was talking to a lot of these teens, and their 2 goals for the summer were to not get shot and to get a job, which is pretty striking. So as you can see, over the last year, we've really ramped up our efforts in those regards. But besides just our youth programs, we really do at Community Action have a whole wraparound approach to helping ameliorate the effects of poverty for the citizens of Beloit. So whether it's housing, whether it's job training, whether it's, a little help with getting fresh food from our Community Action Merrill Sharing Garden, all of those things, we feel like there are so many ways to get into poverty, and so we try to offer as many pathways as possible out. So our youth programs are definitely a part of that, but sometimes people don't have that early intervention, and so later on in life something happens, there's a tragedy, there's a change in job circumstance, and they need our help, whether it's with secure housing or getting transportation to work. So we're really pleased to see all these agencies coming together and gathering around those vulnerable members of our community and providing those services. And so we just want to thank you also for helping to support those services through our programs like our Skills Initiative and the Fatherhood Initiative, which you supported last year with CDBG funding. So thank you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stop by Community Action anytime. Stop by our garden. We've got a new staff member out there. We really love to see visitors. I know some of you have been to our programs in the past, so we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can put my citizen hat on, Lynn has invited me the last 2 years to witness the fatherhood program, and as a principal I've seen several of my former students, and this is really a program that works, and you're doing a fantastic job up there with your staff. I was very impressed. Thank you. Okay, other speakers would like to come down and speak. Second call. Third and final call for anybody who'd like to speak on our community development programming. Okay, we will close that at this time and go on to citizens' participation. At this time, any citizens who'd like to speak may speak for up to 3 minutes. We'd like to ask you to refrain from anything slanderous or attacking any individual. And please come down and give your name and address. I have one sheet here. It's from Sandy Disroot. Sandy, if you'd like to step forward first, please.
Good evening.
Evening.
As Dave said, I'm Sandy Disroot. I'm currently the Deputy Register of Deeds for Rock County. My boss is Randy Lies, and he's retiring at the end of the year, not seeking re-election, and I'm running for the position. As his deputy for the last 7 years, I already know what the job is. I work in the office. I've been actually with the county for the last 16 years. 16 years ago, I started in the real property lister's office and in the treasurer's office, where we process deeds and, of course, collect taxes. We worked with the putting together the assessment roll and the tax bills, collecting taxes, settling with all the municipalities, worked a lot with the treasurers and clerks. I've worked a lot with Lillian in the city of Beloit here. 7.5 years ago, I was appointed as the Deputy Register of Deeds. If you're not familiar with what we do in the Register of Deeds office, there's two different sides to it. There's the vital records side, where we issue certified copies of birth, death, and marriage certificates, and the real estate side, where we record documents. We record deeds, mortgages, certified surveys. We record a lot of documents for the city of Beloit, probably a couple hundred a year. We record for the city lis pendens, vacation documents, variances, condemnation orders, utility agreements. Some years we have a lot more than, I think one year, a couple years ago, we had probably hundreds of those utility agreements at one time. So we've been recording some releases, here and there as you've sold properties off. My current responsibilities, I believe, qualify me for this position. Managing and training staff, including running the daily operations of the office. When Randy is not there, I run the office when he's gone. I've attended conferences with the Register of Deeds Association when he's not been available. All 5 of my supervisors that I've had over the last 16 years are also endorsing me for this position, as well as my coworkers that are currently there. One of the projects that I worked on was in the real estate side, coordinating an imaging project. We scanned and indexed with document numbers about 600,000 documents with about 1 million images, including all of the deeds and tract indexes, all those big old dusty volumes that are in our vaults, so that we can get deeds back to the 1830s. They are all scanned and in the system. We're still working on part of that project to add indexing, add owners' names and legal descriptions to all those documents to make them easily accessible and searchable. But we're always looking at new technology and trying to stay ahead of the technology and researching things. We also are working on electronic recording. That's something that it's moving to the future, and recording documents without ever putting our hands on them. Another area we've been working on is in the vital records side. As far as birth records go, beginning next year, we'll be able to issue birth records for you even if you were not born in Rock County. Right now, that's how it is. We can only issue any vital records for events that happened in Rock County. So beginning in 2017, it's going to be a slow integration into getting those documents. I enjoy serving the public. The Register of Deeds is the next logical step for me in that public service. I already know the job and I know what it entails. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or if you would like to visit my website, it's at disrootfordeeds.com. Any questions? Thank you.
And we've had some trouble with the microphones, according to Lori, so if I don't recognize you, Kevin will let me know. I'll see, Sheila's just went on, okay. It's on now. Okay, we'll go to the consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered at this point in the agenda. Would anybody like anything removed from the agenda? Now it's not. Now the light's not on. Okay. Just a second. Okay, Sheila.
Thank you. I'd like to request that items G as in girl and I as in igloo be removed, please.
Items G and I. Okay, so we will have for approval for consent A, B, C, D, E, F, and H. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Moved by Hendricks, seconded by Sloniker. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We'll then go to G.
Item 6G is a resolution awarding Public Works contract C1609A Collie Road traffic signals.
Mr. Boysen.
This project would install new traffic signals at the intersection of Collie Road and Gateway Boulevard. One bid was received in the amount of $109,639.58 from MP Systems, Inc., doing business as Piperline, and is 12.76% more than the engineer's estimate of $97,230. The MP Systems, Inc., doing business as Pepperline, is considered a responsible bidder for this project. With $16,360.42 allocated for change orders or extra work, the total project cost is $126,000. Funding is available in TIF 10 capital budget for 2016, and council approval of the award resolution is recommended.
You push, okay. Ms.
I think I'm,
Councilor
I think I'm
DeForest.
on. Thank
Okay.
you. Mr. Boyson, especially since this is 12% more than the engineer's estimate, and this is for the traffic signals, I just wanted to ask about why it was over estimate, and then also just to clarify, this will be paid for out of TID 10, is that correct?
Yes, TID 10, that's correct.
Okay.
And when projects are bid like this, of course, we do estimates, and they truly are only estimates. Then we will get the bids. We do analyze the bids once received. Sometimes they're lower than our estimates, as everyone knows, and sometimes they're higher than the estimate. So this submitted bid has been evaluated, and it is believed to be a responsive and responsible bid from a responsible bidder. So that's our normal criteria that we use to recommend an award in a case like this.
Okay, thank you.
Manager Luther.
I just also indicate that the total pricing for the traffic signal is in keeping with what we would typically presume these to cost. They're each individualized, but on average, this pricing is consistent with what an average traffic signal would cost.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Moisen. Is there a motion on G? Moved by DeForest. Seconded by Hendricks, Duncan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Thank you again. I.
6I is a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a state municipal agreement with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for STP Urban Project for the reconstruction of Prairie Avenue from Cranston Road to Hubie Parkway.
Mr. Boysen.
In September of 2015, the city submitted a project to the Wisconsin Department of Transportation STP Urban Program to assist in the payment for public right-of-way improvements. And we're very pleased that this project as submitted has been accepted, and we'll be providing substantial funding towards this project. The submittal has been accepted for funding, and approval of the provided state municipal agreement is now required to finalize the grant funding. The project has a length of 6,200 feet and will replace the existing concrete pavement, which has severe transverse joint failures. The traffic signals will be upgraded to current design standards. Provision of street lighting and bicycle accommodations are also anticipated. The project will be included in the 2016 was included in the 2016 capital budget for design and anticipated in addition to the in anticipation of the STP urban funding. As noted in the agreement, federal funding in the amount of $1,900,497, which is 80% of the total estimated construction cost of $2,446,500, will be made available through the agreement. Funding for the city's design costs is partially available in the 2016 CIP budget. The balance of the design is anticipated to be included in the 2017 CIP budget as denoted in the CIP program that was approved last year. The city's portion of construction funding will be in future CIP budgets. Council approval of the resolution approving the state municipal agreement is recommended.
Councilor DeForest.
Thank you. Mr. Boyson, could you explain what you meant in the staff summary by road diet in terms of considerations for construction?
Is it the staff summary or in the agreement form?
I'm not sure which.
I think the agreement form does make
Okay.
reference to road diet. And so road diet is a kind of a term of art for roadway planners and designers. And it has to do with the consideration of reducing the number of through lanes from the current existing number of through lanes to a lesser number. And the benefit of, and of course, nothing that's done of this type with a federal aid highway project, all being done in accordance with the WSDOT design, planning, and design procedures, would ever make a road less safe. So the roads evaluate accidents, they evaluate current traffic, they evaluate potential future traffic as based on the federally approved estimates for traffic development, for land use development, and trending for trips and all that type of thing. So this road, when designed, will be designed in accordance with all those standards for a period 20 years in advance to make it safer. It's just something that might have, it just emphasizes that we will consider what the real needs of the roadway are. Sometimes you say, well, we've got so many lanes. And historically, it's a pretty good rule of thumb to say we must need all those lanes. We'll have those, maybe we'll build some more, and then we'll add bike lanes, and then we'll add sidewalks, and we'll just, certainly, you wouldn't want to logically just acquire property if you hadn't given serious thought to the potential for the ability to maybe reduce a 4-lane road to a 2-lane road, which then would accommodate other uses of the right-of-way, including perhaps center lane, protected turn opportunities, making room for adjacent bike lanes, and I think we substantially have sidewalks on this project. There might be a gap here or there that would likely be filled in, but so that would be, and that would be very similar to what was concluded to the area, the section immediately to the north of this section. And you can't assume it'll be the same here, but our preliminary slats-based projections suggest that that is likely to be the case, or it's very well may be the case. So and this agreement was provided to us by the Wisconsin Department of Transportation, and they just made a reference to that based on discussions with the SLAT staff that is something they feel should be considered, and we're very open and anticipate that to be a very desirable process to make sure we emphasize that or don't overlook that in any way.
So can I ask a clarifying question, just to make sure I understand? So it sounds like you're not going to presume there's going to be a certain number of lanes on each side of the street because you want to consider protected turn lanes, which is important on Prairie, and a bike path, because I'm assuming we'll have bike path and sidewalk and all that we need.
Probably bike lanes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So that makes sense to me. And that will save us money, so we don't have to try to do any, land purchasing to try to widen.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and you really
Unless it's
wouldn't ever
needed.
want to do that, partly because of the impacts of right-of-way acquisition that could potentially be avoided, and of course, a significant expense to
Okay.
add a lane if you don't need to.
Okay, and I just wanted to be clear, so it looks like from the information provided, this is scheduled for 2018, but we have some buffer time out to 22 to build. So we
That's
could
right.
spread it out over 2 years CIP budgets if we needed to.
Yes, that's right. That's what we anticipate, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Bison?
Just to be clear to everybody, this is a design phase only. This is just to bring the design forward and get that finished and finalized, right?
Now, this particular agreement is actually a funding agreement for the construction
Funding,
stage.
okay.
We couldn't access that money till we complete the design, which all must be done in accordance with all those practices and
So
procedures I mentioned.
right now,
But
this is going forward, okay.
current year, and we haven't begun yet, but we have budgeting authorized in this year and then proposed for next year over these 2 years for the design aspects of it. But this actual action tonight is for the council to approve the resolution that would adopt the agreement for that $1.9 million of funding assistance for construction.
Okay.
Other questions for Mr. Bison? Manager Luther?
If I heard you correctly, I think the point you're trying to make is that this is a multi-year project. This is a project that is going to be several years in the making. We'll begin design in 2016, continue design in 2017, and the absolute soonest that we could begin construction is 2018, and that is probably optimistic. So we are several years down the road to making a project this size come to fruition, given all of the complexities in working through the process with our partners.
Is there a motion?
I move.
Moved by Preschel,
Second.
seconded by Sloniker. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. We'll now go to ordinances. We have no ordinances, okay, and no appointments. Okay, now we'll go to councilor activities and upcoming events. Councilor DeForest.
Thank you.
You're on.
Okay, thank you. I was able to attend the vigil to protest against solitary confinement hosted by Job. The UN has declared that more than 10 days in solitary confinement is torture, and so I was pleased to be able to stand in protest with other Beloiters regarding solitary confinement use in our Wisconsin prisons. I was able to attend the School District of Beloit's Summer Meals Program kickoff. There are lots of locations around the city where kids can get free meals, can get free lunch every day. If you need to find a location, just call 361-3446. Again, that's 361-3446, and you can find the location nearest you where any child can just show up and get a free meal, no questions asked. So would really encourage you to take advantage of that. I attended the breakfast at Pullman Field to see the new batting cage, and so I really enjoyed getting the tour of that and meeting some of the individuals that I hadn't met before who worked on the batting cage. I was able to stop by a couple times during its progress, and so it was exciting to see it almost completed. And then I went on to have more pancakes at the Strawberry Fest at Sun Valley Presbyterian, and was able to roll up my sleeves and help the parishioners there. I worked there for a couple hours helping to serve strawberry crepes and pancakes, and really enjoyed that. I would really like to thank again that church for hosting that event. It's grown every year. The money raised goes directly to charity, so I appreciate what they do to serve Beloiters, and it's wonderful to have an event of that scale on the west side of town. And then finally, I was asked by a citizen to read his comments because he wanted to be here at this meeting but could not. And so he asked me to please read this letter on his behalf. He said, I cannot go to a city meeting to bring this matter to light due to disabilities I have that prevent me from doing so. He says, my name is Garrett Price. I reside at 1302 Dewey Avenue. I recently received a letter from the city notifying me of sidewalk repairs that need to be completed due to safety hazards. I wholeheartedly agree that this needs to be done as it is a safety issue, and I have no problem having the work done. I do, however, have a problem with where the city trees and the boulevard are there, that their roots destroyed the sidewalk that I have to pay for. The city has statutes that say they own the trees and they are the city's property and I have no control over them. Why is the city not paying for the damages that are done to the sidewalks by the city-owned tree roots? I have contacted and been transferred to numerous departments within the city. The only answer I've received is that the trees are owned by the city. The city tree's roots did damage the sidewalks, but I am to pay for the sidewalks that the city tree roots damage. That's the way it is, and it's not going to change. This cannot be addressed by the city to discuss, review, and change. Why the city does not pay for damages to the sidewalks that the city property caused. My only logical option would be to pursue either a personal or class action lawsuit against the city. If you have any questions about this matter, please contact me. Thank you and have a great day. And I just wanted to make sure the public knows that Mike Flesch, our city engineer, is already following up with this individual, but I did make that commitment to him that I would read his comments here at the meeting, so thank you.
Right. If I could add, our city departments went above and beyond, and Mike volunteered to go to the house, and he talked, and it's my understanding that the individual does understand fully the matter, and as far as I'm concerned, the matter is closed, but thank you for reading that. Councilor Sloniker.
I'll pass.
Okay. Councilor, let's see. Duncan, you're next, yes. Right.
Do I have to push that? No, you're good. Okay. I had the opportunity to go along with Julie Christensen and Terry Downing to tour some of the potential revitalization projects on the west side of town. Our city will be partnering with neighborhood housing and community action so that we can join efforts to make a difference one block at a time. That is what's so special about Beloit. We care about our neighborhoods. Also, I wear another hat. I am vice chair of the Wisconsin State Public Defender Board, and last week I attended a meeting in Boston for 2 days. I was able to talk with our legislative liaison and state board members about assisting with issues that are affecting lives of people in our community throughout the county and the state, relative to mass incarceration, solitary confinement, and implicit bias. I am happy to report that the State Public Defender's Office is taking the lead and have formed a new task force to analyze data and address these issues, as well as the inefficiencies at Lincoln Hills, which is a correctional facility for juveniles where there have been allegations of assault, abuse, and intimidation. We have to continue to work together to make things better. Also, at our last council meeting, I forgot to mention condolences for the family of Philip L. Van Landingham Sr. Phil began his career with the City of Beloit in August of 1977, working for several divisions and had worked in the Transit Division since 1988. He enjoyed being in the outdoors and spending time with his family, especially at their annual 4th of July barbecue. And his son also works for the City of Beloit. To Phil's wife, Jean Van Landingham, and family, please know that he will be missed and that we will keep your family in our thoughts and prayers. That's all I have.
Thank you. Counselor Preschel.
Okay. I was going to talk about something else, but I'm going to start out tonight by talking about a phone call I received this morning from the Beloit Daily News about doing an article about panhandling. Since I've become a city councilor, I've got a lot of feedback and a lot of mention from a lot of people asking us, what are you going to do about the panhandling problem in Beloit? It seems to be on the minds of a lot of citizens and business owners. Last week I had 5 days in a row where I was approached by citizens and business owners asking me about panhandling. And one day I was approached twice. And that's just in a 5-day span. So I decided tonight I would mention something about it. Hopefully the Beloit Daily News article will, bring out some more information. Anyway, it seems that in the city of Beloit, in panhandling in general, we have the truly needed, and we have the drug, alcohol addicted, and we have the con artists that are just out there trying to scam some money off people. The biggest thing about this whole problem is giving money to the panhandlers is not going to make things better. It's not going to make it better for them. It's not going to make it better for us. It's not going to make the problem less aware or less annoying. The best thing we can do is to not give money to panhandlers. And I think that's about the only thing as I can encourage is that people stop doing that. Give them an address or a phone number for somebody to call for help, but don't give them money. It's a First Amendment issue. In January, the City of Madison suspended enforcement of their panhandling ordinance. There's a whole lot of issues, and I don't think the city we really need to spend our time spending the money on stuff that we can't do anything about. That's going to be a waste of our resources. But we do have to do something about panhandling, and that's on the citizens of Beloit. So the citizens of Beloit need to stop giving these guys money. Hopefully, they'll get the clue that maybe it's not worth hanging out in the corners trying to get it. And with that, I'll move on to tomorrow night's cancer benefit at Culver's, where I will be one of the judges of the car show. Somehow they're going to let some guy that drives a goofy old PT Cruiser judge cars. I don't know. I try not to embarrass anybody. But if you can be there, it's a worthy cause, and it happens every year. I've been watching it for 15, and it's kind of fun, the idea that I can be part of it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Vice President Levy.
Nothing.
Okay. And I'd like to now turn to our youngest member, but who just had a birthday. Miss Counselor today. We already sang, but Counselor Hendricks.
Yes, thank you for my beautiful song as I entered into the room. Last week I was able to attend an event at Big Hill Center. That's the first time I had been there since we acquired it as a city. And we got a lot of compliments, just hearing the people that were there, a lot of compliments on the facility. Last time I was there, it was still the Girl Scouts building, and I was a lot younger. But we did use the space. The group did use the space, and it was great. We had a lot of good feedback, so kudos. I look forward to attending the Parks Tour next week. And I'm just all on Parks and Recs this go-round. But on Saturday, I was able to attend the movie on the big lawn, on the lawn at Horace White Park, not the big lawn at Riverside. Kung Fu Panda 3, my daughter really enjoyed that. So we look forward to our summer movies on the lawn. I have to remember to take my Claritin next time. But July 16th is the next movie at Merrill Community Center. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is that feature film. And then July 30th is Zootopia. I'm really looking forward to that at New Zion Baptist Church. So that's free for the community, a great free family fun, movies on the lawn, so we enjoyed that. I was able to participate, well, not participate, but watch the fireworks on last night. Beautiful display. Saw a lot of people out enjoying the fireworks, and I always like to believe that it's just a welcoming of the real holiday, which is my birthday today. So every year, I think my mom must have told me that story when I was younger, and I believe it. It's my story. I'm sticking to it. That's it. That's all I have.
Came out with a big bang.
Yeah.
Okay. All I want to add is that was a very nice evening last night with the thousands of Beloiters and our guests from other cities that were there. I was honored to represent our city manager and the council and the city of Beloit. And it's amazing. There are no mosquitoes down there. It's just it's a beautiful night. The fellowship, the fun. I was down there and I saw our police chief down there and as the evening wore on, a little boy came over and apparently somebody was being naughty, and he took the chief, and the chief intervened at some with one of our problems, but very few problems down there. But just want to thank everybody for making it a wonderful evening again for Beloit. It's great to have out-of-towners come in when we showcase our city. It's just beautiful down there, and I encourage them to go downtown and have some food downtown and visit the college and come back for our second largest farmers market, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, that's all I have. We'll go to the city manager's presentation, and we have a short presentation of good news. Is that right, Manager Luther? You're on.
So I'm going to hand this over to our Finance Director, Eric Miller, and our consultant. But I was saying early that when you're reviewing your CAFR and reviewing your audit, it is a very good thing if these are not the most exciting presentations for the audience. So no offense intended, but we like this to be just solid numbers, all is well, and that's what we expect. So thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank
Mr.
you
Miller.
very much. I will take no offense to that, of course. So each year Baker Tilly conducts an independent audit and prepares the comprehensive annual financial statements for the city of Beloit. It's a very extensive process that actually begins in December with the preliminary field work when they come out to visit us. And it ends in June as our financial deadline to many agencies to have the CAFR prepared is June 30. So with that said, I'd just like to personally thank my Director of Accounting, Dawn Duvall, and all of her staff, as well as all the staff as the Finance and Administrative Services Department puts a lot of work and a great deal of effort into preparing for the annual audit, as well as when the auditors are here conducting their field work, and we couldn't do it without all the hard work of the staff. I'd also like to thank Carla Gogan, who I'd like to introduce at this time. Herself and her staff always do a fantastic job of actually working with the city. It's more of a collaborative effort, the way that we look at it, so that they can help us get better at what we do. And so at this time, I'd just like to turn it over to Carla, and she'll go through the presentation for us.
Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. I didn't mean to clear the room, however.
I told him, Carla, to be brief. I tried to tell him, but...
Right, and I heard that brief. So I'm Carla Gogan, partner with Baker Tilly Virtual Kraus. You do engage us to perform the financial audit as well as a compliance audit because you do receive a significant amount of federal and state funding. My primary goal of being here tonight is to share some information with you, but also to welcome questions. I will echo what Eric mentioned, and that is it is no small task getting ready for the audit. I've only been on the auditor's side, but I know what we request and the amount of time and effort that it does take. The city has for a number of years prepared a comprehensive annual financial report, or what we refer to as a CAFR. And what's special about that is not all communities do that. As a result, you are providing additional information as a part of your CAFR, but also you're submitting it to the Government Finance Officers Association, or the GFOA, and it goes through actually 3 additional reviews. So GFOA has 2 technical reviews, technical reviewers that review your report, as well as a special review committee volunteer member. I'm a volunteer member, so I review CAFRs from other communities throughout the country. But what they do is they'll provide feedback and comments on the CAFR and for improvement. And proud to say that, really, I would say those comments have been minimal in the past. So tonight, posted to your website is the CAFR, so that's your full document. Just a few things to note within that document. One is the management's discussion and analysis. It's a nice narrative. It's really a prescribed form. The standards require certain components to be included within the MD&A that is drafted by management, and it does provide a nice summary of what occurred during the year. Also included within the CAFR is our audit opinion. That's what you're hiring us to do. And as the city manager said, we've issued a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance you can receive on your financial statements. It's what you've received in the past. It's what you should expect to receive. Tonight I'm going to be going through the report to City Council. All of the information contained within this document can be found within the financial statements. What we like to do is hit on some highlights, both from a governmental fund perspective. We're going to spend some time talking about the general fund, which is the main operating fund of the city, and then we're going to talk about the utility funds or the enterprise funds. Your general fund is primarily supported by tax dollars and intergovernmental revenues, so state and federal aid, whereas your enterprise funds are supported by the charges that are being charged to support their operations. So we'll go through some of those metrics, and then I'll finish tonight with the required communication letter as well. So your general fund, as I mentioned, this is your main operating fund of the city. This is where you are recording your public safety, your public works related costs. And what we show here is the equity position in the general fund, or fund balance. And there's a slide a little bit later that talks about the different pieces or components of fund balance, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. What I would like to highlight is your unassigned fund balance. Unassigned means that right now, those monies, there's no specific strings attached. They're not restricted through grant agreements. They have not been assigned or committed by the City Council for a particular purpose. And they don't represent non-spendable, which is the first line here, which are funds that are really non-spendable in nature, which are things like prepaid items, inventory. You're not in the business of selling inventory. You use your inventory within the operations of the city. Long-term related items, but a metric, and the city has a policy, and I think that's very important that the city has a policy and they're monitoring against that policy. The city's policy is to look at unassigned general fund balance and compare that to 2 things. One, either 15% of operating revenue, or 3 months of the general fund operating expenditures. And so whichever number is greater, that's your target. And so the greater of those 2 is the 3 months of general fund operating expenditures, which is $7.6 million. And your unassigned fund balance on this page, in the middle of the page, is just over $8 million. So you are exceeding the policy that you've set in terms of a minimum amount of unassigned fund balance. So that's positive, that's what you're expecting. You have your summarized income statement below, and I'm going to defer the conversation to a later slide where we'll talk about some of those variances. The other statistic that we like to talk about is the general obligation debt of the city, and there's a slide, a few slides from now, which looks at a longer window of time, a 5-year time horizon. But general obligation debt is secured by the taxing authority of the city, and you're limited by how much you can actually borrow, and you're at about 65%. I'm going to touch on this in a few slides where we're going to look at some statistical information regarding that. We finish with, and we do include internal service funds, because internal service funds are intended to recover their costs by charging departments for those costs. So included within here are your equipment replacement fund, general liability insurance, health insurance, and retiree health insurance. And we just,
if you go back even 4 years, if you added those up, you were in a deficit position. And again, you want these to essentially be breaking even. If you combine all of those, you have accumulated some funds. Some funds are still in a deficit position, being the health insurance funds, whereas general liability and equipment are operating at a surplus. Again, we bring this up because ultimately if there are deficits, those will need to be made up elsewhere. So then if we look at some trends, because again, I think it's important to look at trend information and not just look at the end of the year. This is your fund balance position. And, again, I think the important line to be looking at is the unassigned fund balance line. And I think what's important to note is at the end of 15, you were exceeding the policy you had set in terms of how much unassigned fund balance you should have. When you see that the net decrease in fund balance went down $335,000, you actually budgeted to decrease fund balance by about $300,000, and you'll see that in a slide. So you essentially operated in accordance to what you had budgeted. Fund balance, we've touched on this, but this is just for your reference, again, with the general fund balance to give you a sense of what is included within those various categories. So then we get to the budget and actual for the general fund. And you'll see that the final budget compared to actual for the general fund, you were under budget by about $400,000. There's a few things that contributed to that. One being fines, forfeitures, and penalties for traffic and non-traffic and parking fines were down in 2015 by about $240,000. The payment in lieu of tax from the water utility was down about $50,000. And the third item was in the unrealized gain loss on investments. That's a paper item. It's expected that you're going to hold your investments to maturity. And so it's anticipated that unrealized loss, again, will reverse itself while holding your securities to maturity. And that's just a function of the markets. But then if you look at expenditures, you actually have a positive variance, meaning you expended about $400,000 less than what you had budgeted. And again, there are some items in finance and administration were down about $285,000 due to reduced personnel costs. Public Works was under budget. That's consistent with I serve 35 municipalities around the state of Wisconsin or governmental entities. Public Works have been down across the state because of the mild winter, as well as lower fuel costs. I haven't looked at the Farmer's Almanac. I don't know what is being predicted for 2016 because that can be somewhat of a wild card from year to year. But then if we look at actual compared to budget, again, if you look at that bottom line, you essentially executed on your budget. You came in about $30,000 less in terms of fund balance than what you had anticipated, but given your size of budget, that's certainly commendable. That previous slide was just, again, talking about those differences so that you had that for your references that we've talked through. And then, as I mentioned, GO debt capacity versus your debt limit. I think it's important to look at the top line and you look at the GO debt limit. That's based on 5% of your equalized value. That trended down from 2011, 12 to 13, where it hit a low. And again, that was very consistent around the state of Wisconsin, just given the Great Recession. You've rebounded nicely with some growth in equalized value in 2014 and 15. And then if you also look at your debt is at a 5-year low in terms of GO debt. And so the amount or the percent of available over the last 5 years is an all-time high. So that's a combination of paying down existing general obligation debt as well as the equalized value having grown. And at the very bottom, that'll show you that increase or the growth in equalized value. So before I shift to the enterprise funds, which are, again, financed by the operating activity of those activities, any questions on the general fund or debt results? All right, then we'll move to the utilities and just a few benchmarks for each utility. Water sales are down about 2%. That's consistent with industry trends. People trying to save and conserve on water. Revenues have been relatively flat over 5 years. Operating costs did jump up this year about 17%, but the largest portion of that was water tower painting, which that's just something you have to do. It's an expense, and without that, your expenses would have been up about 4%. So then we look below at some key metrics. Months of unrestricted cash. It's recommended to have about 3 months of unrestricted cash. You're at 2.7 months or just under that. Authorized rate of return, the water utility is a regulated utility under the Public Service Commission, and they essentially give you the rate of return that you can earn on your water utility. And the actual rate was less than the authorized rate, so actual was 2.4% with authorized rate of 5%. And then debt coverage, because you do issue revenue bonds, the bonds require so much in terms of earnings to ensure that the bonds are going to be repaid. And you met debt coverage, but not by a lot. It is time to review rates, and management is currently going through that process to ensure that you have adequate rates to meet these metrics. And you did meet these metrics, essentially in terms of debt coverage, the other two lagging. Then moving on to the sewer utility. Sewer utility volume build is going to follow water utility volume build. Again, revenues flat over 5 years. Expenses were up about 4%, again, consistent with the water utility if you take out the water utility painting. Two metrics, sewer utility is unregulated, so you're not going to have that rate of return piece, but the months of unrestricted cash are about 10 months, so that's certainly very healthy from a sewer utility perspective, and debt coverage is being met. Rates were last changed in 2003. You are required to review rates for to ensure they're adequate every 2 years, so that's just something you're required to do by the DNR. And then we move to the stormwater utility. The equivalent residential units increased by about 1%. Again, you can see the red line, the expenses went up. This was in part due to a required contribution to the equipment replacement fund. The stormwater utility funds the equipment replacement fund for future equipment purchases. In terms of unrestricted cash, it does have sufficient unrestricted cash of just under 6 months, but it has been drawn down since 2012. And again, this also requires the need to meet debt coverage, and it is being met. However, the debt is anticipated, the payments anticipated to go up, and I know you had implemented a stormwater rate increase in 2016 to address that, because you do want to ensure that with the increase in debt service that you're continuing to meet your debt coverage. And so that was really the driver, one of the drivers of an increase in storm rates. And then my last financial page is related to transit. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the funding sources of transit, which is a stable mix, I would say, in terms of transit. If you jump back up, though, to ridership was down, and really that was a trend that we saw with other transits that we work with, in a large part due to a decrease in fuel costs. So as fuel becomes, more economical, you may see ridership decrease. So again, as a result of that, expenses were down, again, large part fuel costs being down, but revenues exceeded expenditures. So that's what I have from the financial metrics. I'll take any questions, and then I do want to touch on the required communication letter. Any questions on the metrics?
Carl, I just have one question, and why were expenses so high with the storm utility for this in 2015? The expenses were always lower than revenue before, and then all of a sudden in 15 it jumped about 30,000 over.
Some of that was due to some reallocation of some staffing. The Public Works Department got together, took a look at some of the actual work that the staff was doing, and that was attributed to some of the staffing reallocation, which did jump some of that up. So that was a portion of that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Carla before she goes on? Okay, Carla.
All right, thank you. So then we have another document, the communication to those charged with governance and management, and there's 4 sections to this report. The first being items that we are required to put in writing. So we do not audit the internal controls of the city, but we are required to gain an understanding of the control environment. That plays into our audit approach. We do a risk-based approach, and we base that on the other municipalities that we serve, the community-specific items, our conversations with management, what's happening in the profession. So the items that we list in the beginning part of the letter are items that we consider to be material weaknesses. Due to the function of how this letter works, there are items that were addressed. If you were to lay this letter down side by side to last year, you would see some of these things falling off. That have been addressed by management, but the very function of the letter, we do not call that out. You'll see additional items being added, and sometimes that's in part because we shift our focus every year in terms of what departments we're looking at, again, based on our risk assessment and so forth, as well as there are some items that will probably stay in here for a period of 2 audit cycles, because by the time we finish our work, we will have noted something, and so really these things have to be taken care of for a full year before we'll remove them from a material weakness. So just to give you a little bit of background there. The second portion is communication. Of this communication is related to just welcoming your feedback. If there's something that you feel is important that we need to know about as part of the audit process, we certainly want to hear from you. Certainly you can connect through Eric or feel free to reach out to me directly. The third part of this communication are informational type things. We provide you things of your interest, things that are happening in the accounting world. One thing that did change this last year was the adoption of a new accounting standard, which for the first time reported an asset on the city's books, and that's consistent with all other entities that belong to the Wisconsin retirement system. So as a member of the Wisconsin retirement system, which is a cost-sharing multi-employer pension plan, it's a fully funded plan. So the city or the state's goal is to have a fully funded pension plan. That's not the case if you go to our south in Illinois. And at the end of the year, actually, the plan was overfunded. And so as a result, all the communities that I work with, all the entities that are part of the Wisconsin retirement system have picked up an asset. And so our letter is going to talk about that a little bit, the change in accounting standard. Now that number is going to bounce around depending upon the markets and what the Wisconsin retirement system is invested in. But certainly that's very positive for communities within Wisconsin. The last part of this communication are required communications that we're required to communicate with you. But at this time, what I'd like to do is just what we've done in the past is just open it up to you, and if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to address specific questions.
Councilor DeForest.
Vice President. Thank you. First, thank you to Eric, Don, and Jessica for doing such a great job. It's amazing what we do with our very short-staffed department. But I feel like it's really important, my job, to make sure that I understand some of the findings that you've expressed here. And it's helpful to know that some of these things have been addressed, but they have to remain on the report for a full year or two. But I still feel like I have to make sure. So some of the things I wanted to double check that concern me the most, page 87 in our electronic packets, there's mention again of no formal risk assessment process, and that's pretty critical. So I just want to make sure, Eric, if you could address kind of where we're at with that.
And I could as well. This was something that when we revisit all these points with the city, and this is one where I did meet with Eric, and the city has definitely made strides, and Eric can certainly speak to this better than I can, in this regard, in terms of having conversations with department heads and so forth. And this was just one where, again, we were looking to see this for a longer, consistent period of time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla. Yeah, that's exactly right. We, Dawn Duvall and I specifically met with one of Carla's partners, Brian Swain, and just primarily to really address the issue of what the finding was designed to tell everybody. And so when we look at what a formal risk assessment is, the first thing that a lot of finance people think of is, how are we going to pay for somebody to come in here and hire a consultant to do a formal full-blown risk assessment? And so really what we were after is, how can we accomplish the risk assessment without having to do that? And so we did have specific meetings with the auditors and trying to determine an internal mechanism to be able to remove this finding. And as Carla said, the problem is that when we start doing that beyond January 1, and we don't do it on a frequent basis, then it still becomes a finding. So the plan going forward is to bring that up in the department head meeting, Take a look at some other formal risk assessments that I know some other municipalities are doing. Carla did provide some documentation that we can look at and try to mirror what some of these other municipalities are doing and try to implement that going forward. And then hopefully we can, finally remove this because we know this has been in here for a while.
Right.
So
Great, thank you. I
Yep.
appreciate the progress made on that.
Sure.
Also, and then I've brought this up every year, I think I've been on council. I just wanted to double check page 93 in our electronic packets about the segregation of duties. And I know some of that we can't help because we have very small staffed divisions. But some of the departments and divisions that were on the list of concern for segregation of duties, I was very surprised by. And I just wanted to explore those. For example, the police department, transit, they have multiple staff. So I wanted to address why isn't there segregation of duties and handling money in those departments when we have multiple staff that could do that?
And I should clarify, and I think this is something where we can work to better define this point. You'll find this point in the majority of our clients that have decentralized operations. So it isn't necessarily indicating that there is no segregation of duties, but any time, and we'll find this at larger municipalities like yourself as well as county government, where you have the decentralization where things are happening in these other departments, and part of this is just to have this awareness that these things are happening in other departments and to ensure that the control environment is such that there's proper controls over this. So this is really more of an informational. This is something that we didn't note as a material weakness.
Okay.
It's just more informational to say you do have decentralized departments and it should be on your radar.
Okay, thank you. And Eric, you feel like there's sufficient controls in these departments and divisions that we can rest assured that?
I do.
Okay.
And like Carla mentioned, this is really a primary indication of just the fact that it's not all located within one single location where, we'd have a better opportunity to have more controls in place for everybody. But instead, we've got, if you look at the list that's provided, all the satellite areas that are around where, you may have somebody at a swimming pool who may collect a little money or whatever. You're not able to keep as tight of a control on that, but we are definitely aware of that, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. My other question was, there was raised in the report, and I just want to get a feel from you primarily, Eric, about concerns with projections based on historical estimates. And I know a lot of that it's not in our control at all, but do you feel comfortable with what's been assessed in terms of our financial stability and our ability to keep our budget balance and our fund balance where it needs to be based on the historical projections, that we're using? Do you feel comfortable with those?
I'm comfortable. The wild card, though, is that we are so dependent on state funding. And so what's difficult is to be able to project what lawmakers in Madison are doing on a biennial basis, where I'm as comfortable today as I can be based on the facts that I know of what's going on in Madison. Going forward, I can't really speak to until we see what they do in terms of passing their budget. So
Right.
I feel pretty comfortable. I know there's a lot of work that needs to be done when we prepare our budget for 2017. But I think, as always, we'll be able to achieve that. So
Great, yeah, we'll be all breathing heavy next year, right?
keep our fingers crossed, yeah.
And then a couple of these things I was able to check in with you about, some of the corrected misstatements.
Yes.
And so for the public's information, for example, the bus purchase that was capitalized twice,
Yep.
and the county BT payable to the county for our portion of it. Can you just explain that general concept, what's happening? And because for the average person that looks at a council packet from the public, they're like, wow, there's a lot of errors here, and they're not really errors, they're just a phenomena of, crossing over fiscal years. So if you could explain that in general,
Right.
I think that would be helpful.
Yep, these are all related to the fact that they are crossing over from one year to the other. And so the item that you're indicating is a capital project where work was complete on a project, but we had not yet been billed. So since that work has been done, the work needs to be recorded in the financial statement. So Baker Tilly took a look at the invoices that were received after January 1, and we basically recorded them back to the prior fiscal year. So it was just an accrual of an accounts payable that became due in 2016.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll be all breathing heavy next year, right?
So it was just an accrual of an accounts payable that became due in 2016. So it was just an accrual of an accounts payable that became due in 2016. So it was just an accrual of an accounts payable that became due in 2016.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you.
was one of them. And then as far as the bus purchase goes, Baker Tilly does take a look at our fixed assets. There was a capitalized bus that was taking place. Our director of accounting made the entry, which then our financial system duplicated the entry, so therefore we had to go and back one out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Carla or Eric?
Could I make one other comment? I saw this before, the videos that are mentioned on page 95 in your electronic packets. Thank you for providing those to elected officials, because I'm a social worker by trade, so I'm not real familiar with reading through financial documents. I had to really spend a lot of time digging in them to understand. But those videos are very helpful, and thank you for trying to provide some instruction and support to us so that we can be responsible stewards of the taxpayer money. So thank you.
We appreciate your feedback, and if there are other things that you'd like to see, they are, they're free of charge, and it is something we do want to do to make sure that as council members, you're educated, so that you can ultimately take responsibility for
Thank
the
you.
information.
Thank you, Carla from Baker Tilly. And do you have a question?
No.
Oh. Okay. Thank you, Carla, and thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time. And again, all the cooperation that was shown by all the department heads and staff when we're here for the audit, we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to number 11, reports from boards and city officers. There are none. Number 12. Want to do your, let's see, Mark? Being the rookie, you usually adjourn? Yes. What?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Okay. Motion by.
I thought we'd let the birthday girl do it.
Okay. You're the rookie.
It's too late. Call for the vote.
Motion by
Call for the vote.
Second by, who seconded?
Sheila.
By DeForest. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you.